Do you find yourself always copying your teammates' crosshairs just to whiff all your shots? Or maybe you've been using a center dot, yet you can't seem to hit any headshots? In today's video, I'm going to give you an in-depth guide to find the perfect crosshair given your current playstyle and your aim without having to copy anyone else's or any pro players. With that being said, let's get right into it. When it comes to picking a crosshair, there are three different things you have to keep in mind: the color, the shape, and the size. Each one of these is going to have a different impact on how you see your crosshair and ultimately how you aim in game. First, let's go over how to actually edit your crosshair properly. You want to go into your settings and then go over to Crosshair. From here, you need to make sure that you turn advanced options on. This is going to allow you to edit every single one of your crosshairs. Your primary, your ADS, and your sniper crosshair all separately, which is very important because they all have their own use. When it comes to picking the color of your crosshair, it mostly comes down to preference. However, you do need to take into consideration one thing: the enemy outline color that you are currently using. You want to make sure that your crosshair contrasts the color of the enemies. So if you're using red enemy outlines, a green crosshair would be ideal. If you're using yellow enemy outlines, then a cyan color would be the best. And if you're using purple enemy outlines, then a yellow crosshair would be the easiest to see. Now, keep in mind that a white or black crosshair would work as well. However, I wouldn't recommend either one, as there are light and dark backgrounds on certain maps, which is going to make it hard for your crosshair to stand out, and an all black crosshair can actually make it harder for you to see how precise your aim is. So when you go to pick the color of your crosshair, I would highly suggest you choose one of the three mentioned, depending on what enemy outline colors you are currently using. Also, when it comes to enemy outline colors, red and yellow would be the best, as red is the first color that we see, so if you were struggling with reaction time, I would choose that one, and yellow is the easiest color for us to see, so if you're struggling seeing enemies on the map, I would go ahead and choose that color. Regardless of what color you decide to pick, I would recommend that you turn crosshair outlines on, as this is going to allow your crosshair to stand out from everything around you, making it much easier to see and aim with. Now that you know what color you should be using, let's go over the shape of the crosshair. Generally speaking, there are 4 different shapes of crosshair that you can choose from. Number 1, a tiny center dot, which should be used if you're mostly taking mid to long range fights, or you want to be as precise as possible. This type of crosshair is not recommended unless you have really good raw aim and you know you can hit your shots easily. The second shape would be a normal crosshair. This will look like 4 lines with a small gap in the middle or no gap. If you want to use no gap, you have to use inner lines only, and if you want a gap in the middle, you can use inner or outer lines. However, I would recommend using inner lines only for most crosshairs. This type of crosshair is recommended most of the time, as it gives you a good mix between accuracy and control. Third type of crosshair is 4 lines with a center dot in the middle. This type of crosshair is recommended for beginners, as it's going to give you a dot in the middle to focus on for accuracy, while also having the entire crosshair to look at while you're controlling your spray or centering on a target. And the last type of crosshair you can choose from is a circle or a square with a gap in it. Now, this type of crosshair can be decent as long as the gap in the middle isn't too big. If you have too big of a center gap, it's going to be hard for you to know exactly where you are shooting. So if you want to use one of these center gap crosshairs, make sure that the hole in the middle is no bigger than the head of an enemy agent, so that you can know that your crosshair is directly on them. You can also go ahead and make different unique shapes out of your crosshairs, but I would never recommend these, so I'm not going to be covering them, as they do look cool, but the classic crosshairs will give you better performance. Also, keep in mind that regardless of whatever crosshair shape you choose, you can turn fade crosshair on, which will essentially help you understand the spray control of your gun. Each gun has a certain amount of bullets and spray pattern before hard RNG and recoil sets in. If you set fade crosshair on, as soon as your gun kicks into RNG, the top of the crosshair will fade away, allowing you to know exactly when you need to stop shooting and reset your aim. This is recommended for beginners who do not yet know the exact timing of each gun and when to reset their aim. However, you can use it at any skill level, but I wouldn't recommend it for everyone, as it can be distracting and throw off your aim. So if you know the spray patterns and when to reset your aim, don't use it. As a reminder, the Phantom and the Vandal's recoil in RNG will get very difficult after the first 8 bullets, but the Phantom is a lot easier to control during those first 8 bullets and the bullets that follow after. Also, the Phantom's recoil will reset faster than the Vandal's, so always keep that in mind as well. Lastly, you can turn firing or movement error on, which will make your crosshair move when you have to reset your recoil or when you're moving and you don't have first shot accuracy. This is also recommended for beginners only, as it can become very distracting. distracting. Unless you really struggle with movement and knowing when to reset your aim, I wouldn't recommend using either of these settings. Also, if you're enjoying the video so far, consider dropping a like, subbing to the channel, and ringing that bell notification. That way, you won't miss any of my future uploads so that you can stay ahead of every other gamer and unlock your full potential. Next, let's talk about the most important aspect of your crosshair, and that is the size you choose to use. Remember, size doesn't matter. It's all about how you use it. However, too big of a crosshair can be an issue. Depending on how you aim, you will want to choose a different size of crosshair. If your aim is very accurate and you usually prefer to use a Vandal and go for one taps or small bursts, the smaller the crosshair, the better, as a smaller crosshair is going to allow you to be more accurate, but it will be much harder for you to aim with, as you have to be very precise to center your shots. A small crosshair would be considered as any size that is just as big as the enemy's head or smaller. So if you don't have the best aim yet, I wouldn't recommend using a very small crosshair, but I would recommend using a medium-sized crosshair. This type of crosshair is good for accuracy, but it's also easier to see and aim with. This would be considered as any size that is slightly bigger than the enemy's head, but it doesn't go past their chest. It's good for long range, medium range, and close range battles, and it's going to allow you to be very precise with your aim, while also allowing you to control your spray and your recoil, while centering on targets much easier. And the last size of crosshair that you can choose is a bigger crosshair. This will be any crosshair that is big enough to cover the entire enemy's head all the way down past their chest. I wouldn't usually recommend using a bigger crosshair, as it's going to be very distracting and hard for you to be precise with. Now, the bigger you go, the worse it gets, as these are usually looked as troll crosshairs and shouldn't be used if you're taking the game seriously. However, you can go ahead and use a slightly bigger than normal crosshair, which would be big enough that it's just down past the enemy's chest. This type of crosshair will sacrifice a bit of precision for a lot easier control and centering. If you are someone who struggles with overall aim and centering on a target, you may benefit from trying a slightly bigger crosshair. However, always keep in mind that everyone sees things differently and not everyone is going to prefer the same thing. So it is best that you think about how you aim currently and try out the different colors, shapes, and sizes recommended in this video, but you also go ahead and try out some different ones to see what really works best for you. Remember that at the end of the day, these are just suggestions. However, I have taken into consideration performance over looks and how to choose the best crosshair given your current playstyle. But quickly, before I give you the last tip on how to find your perfect crosshair, what crosshair are you currently using right now? Let me know in the comment section down below. Lastly, let's talk about ADS and sniper scope options. Since you will most likely only be ADSing at long distances, I would highly suggest that you use a center dot no bigger than the enemy's head with outlines on, so that you can be as precise as possible. And as for your sniper crosshair, if you have troubles hitting your shots with the operator, you can use a bigger dot so that you know exactly when you are on the enemy. This will make it much easier for you to know when you're on the enemy, but the farther away they are, the harder it's going to be to aim with. Now, if you're good with the operator and you like to quick scope and you can hit your shots, then a smaller dot is recommended, as it is very precise and will leave less clutter on your screen. It is also recommended that you leave the color of all your different crosshairs the same for consistency. However, I don't think it's that big of a deal, so go with what feels best for you given the crosshair you're using. Also, as a bonus, since everybody's always asking me what crosshair I use, I'm going to show you it right now. It is Innerlines 1312 with outlines turned on at 0.55 with a center dot for ADS and the normal sniper crosshair. Thank you guys so much for watching, and now that you know exactly how to choose the best crosshair for yourself, go ahead and feel free to test it out with my in-game aim routine that will be linked at the end of this video. That way, you can break in your new crosshair and start hitting shots like you never have before. Much love guys, and thank you for watching. Hopefully I'll see you in the next one.